Let me ask you something before I even begin. Have you ever sat in a room full of people who were supposed to love you, and felt completely and utterly alone? Have you ever been disrespected so deeply, so publicly, so casually, that the room went quiet and every single pair of eyes turned to look at you, waiting to see what you would do? I have. I sat in that room. I heard those words. I felt the heat rise to my face. I felt my hands tremble under the table. And do you know what I did? I smiled. I picked up my glass of juice. I smiled, and I said nothing. Because here is what 63 years of living on this earth has taught me. The loudest response is sometimes no response at all. And the most powerful move you can make is the one nobody sees coming. My name is Harold. Harold Eugene Mercer. And what I'm about to tell you happened to me just 8 months ago. I have thought long and hard about whether to share this story. But my daughter convinced me. She said, "Dad, there are other fathers out there like you. Quiet men, humble men, men who worked their whole lives for their families and never asked for anything in return. They need to hear this." So here I am. Sit down, get comfortable, because this is going to take a while, and I promise you, every single minute of it is worth your time. I am not a rich man. I want to make that clear from the start. I am not the kind of man who drives expensive cars or wears gold watches. I worked as a maintenance supervisor for 31 years at a manufacturing plant in a small town in Ohio. I wore the same work boots for 7 years until the soles wore through. I packed my own lunch every single day because buying a meal from the cafeteria felt wasteful. My wife, Gloria, God rest her soul, she used to laugh at me for that. She'd say, "Harold, we can afford a sandwich from the deli. You don't have to eat peanut butter every day." But that was just who I was, who I am. Gloria passed away 6 years ago. Breast cancer. She fought it for 2 years with more grace and more dignity than I have ever seen in any human being. When she left, she took a big piece of my heart with her. But she left me 3 children, and she left me the house. Our house, it's not a mansion. Don't picture some grand estate with iron gates and a swimming pool. It is a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on Clover Hill Road, white siding, dark green shutters, a porch where Gloria used to sit every evening in the summer with a glass of iced tea, a backyard where the kids used to run through the sprinklers. But that house is everything. Gloria and I bought it in 1987. We scraped and saved for 3 years for the down payment. We painted every room ourselves. We built the back deck with our own hands. We planted the oak tree in the front yard the year our youngest was born. That tree is now 31 years old and taller than the roof. I paid off that mortgage in 2011, 2 years early. I remember the day I made the final payment. I sat in the kitchen alone. The kids were all grown by then, and I cried. I actually cried because it was mine. It was ours. It was the one thing in this world that nobody could take from me. Or so I thought. Now let me tell you about my children, because you need to know them to understand this story. My oldest is Patricia. She's 40 years old, lives 20 minutes away, works as a school librarian. Patricia is practical, honest, and fiercely protective of her family. She looks exactly like her mother, same eyes, same way of tilting her head when she's thinking. She has 2 kids of her own, Marcus and little Diane. My youngest is Tommy. He's 34. He works in ID. Good job, quiet life, keeps to himself mostly. Tommy never gives me any trouble. He calls me every Sunday morning without fail. And then there is my middle child, my son, Derek. Derek is 38 years old. Derek is the one this story is about. Derek was always the one who wanted more. Not in a bad way, at least not when he was younger. He was ambitious, driven. He went to college on a partial scholarship. got his degree in business, and spent his 20s building a career in real estate investment. He wore nice suits and drove a nice car and lived in a nice apartment downtown. He introduced me to restaurants where the menu had no prices. I was proud of him. I want you to understand that. I was proud of my son, and then he met Vanessa. I remember the first time Derek brought Vanessa home. It was Thanksgiving, about 2 years ago. She was beautiful. I'll say that honestly. Tall, elegant, always put together. The kind of woman who looks like she stepped out of a magazine, even at 7 in the morning. But there was something, a feeling I couldn't put into words. Gloria always said I had good instincts about people. She called it my quiet radar. And my quiet radar was going off the moment Vanessa walked through my front door and looked around the house with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. It was a small thing, the way she looked at the walls, the ceilings, the floors, like she was calculating something. She was polite enough. She helped clear the table. She said all the right things. She called me Mr. Mercer and asked about my work. Patricia liked her, or at least said she did. Tommy was quiet about her, which told me something. Tommy is a good reader of people. Over the next several months, Derek and Vanessa became more serious. They started spending weekends at my house, which I welcomed. I cooked for them. I let them use the backyard, the grill, whatever they wanted. But I started noticing things. Vanessa had a habit of commenting on the house in ways that felt like, I don't know how to describe it, like she was appraising it rather than appreciating it. This neighborhood is really developing, Mr. Mercer. Property values around here have gone up a lot. You know, if you ever did a kitchen renovation, this place would be worth a lot more. Have you thought about what you'll do with the house when you decide to downsize? I always smiled. I always changed the subject. But one evening, I heard her on the phone in the backyard. I wasn't eavesdropping. I was coming out to tell them dinner was ready. I stopped at the screen door when I heard her voice. She was talking to someone, I assumed a friend, and she said, It's a great lot, corner lot, mature trees, 4 bedrooms. The old man won't be around forever. Derek says he'll be reasonable about the estate. It's just a matter of timing. I stood at that screen door for a long moment. Then I turned around, went back to the kitchen, and finished making dinner. And I said nothing. Derek proposed to Vanessa on Valentine's Day, 6 months after that Thanksgiving. He called me the morning after and told me. He sounded happy. He sounded genuinely happy. And I loved him enough to be happy for him. Dad, she said yes. I know you two are still getting to know each other, but I really love her. I hope you'll give her a chance. What do you say to that? What does a father say? I said what any father who loves his son says. Derek, if she makes you happy, she makes me happy. Congratulations, son. I love you. And I meant it. I genuinely meant it. Whatever my concerns were, I pushed them down. I told myself I was an old man who was perhaps too protective. Too suspicious. I told myself that what I had heard that evening was maybe taken out of context, but I didn't stop paying attention. They decided to have an engagement party in March. 60 guests. Derek's friends, Vanessa's family, our extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles, people I hadn't seen in years. They rented out a private room at a restaurant called the Willow Grove, which was exactly as fancy as it sounds. Patricia helped with some of the planning. I offered to contribute financially. Derek said not to worry about it, that Vanessa's parents were handling most of it. Fine, that was fine. The night of the party, I got dressed in my best suit, the navy blue one I wore to Gloria's sister's wedding 4 years ago. I tied my tie carefully in the bathroom mirror. I looked at my reflection for a moment. Be good tonight, Harold. I told myself. This is your son's night. I drove to the Willow Grove alone. The room was beautiful. I'll give Vanessa that. White flowers, soft lighting, round tables with white linens. a bar in the corner, a small dance floor. Photographs of Derek and Vanessa on a display board by the entrance. They looked happy in those photographs. They looked like people who were building something together. I found my seat. I was at the family table, naturally, along with Patricia and her husband Frank, Tommy, my brother Raymond and his wife, and a few cousins. Vanessa's parents were at the head table with Derek and Vanessa. I hadn't spent much time with her parents before that night. Her father was a man named Gerald Whitmore. He was a real estate broker, had his own agency, drove a very expensive car. He shook my hand with the kind of handshake that is meant to establish something. Her mother, Diane Whitmore, was perfectly pleasant in a way that told you nothing about what she was actually thinking. The evening started beautifully. People ate, people laughed, toasts were made. Derek stood up and said beautiful things about Vanessa. He talked about how she had changed his life, how she had made him believe in building something permanent. He looked at her with such love. It hurt my heart to see it, not in a bad way. In the way it hurts when you love someone so much that their happiness physically moves you. Then Vanessa stood up. She tapped her champagne glass. The room quieted. She smiled around the table, that beautiful, camera-perfect smile. She talked about Derek. She talked about their future together. She said things about partnership and shared vision and building a life. And then she said something that stopped my heart. Derek and I have been talking a lot about our future, she said, her voice bright and confident. And we've made some exciting decisions. As many of you know, I work alongside my father in real estate, and we have identified our first major project together, our first real investment as a couple. People were smiling, nodding. People assumed she was about to announce they were buying a house together. Harold's property on Clover Hill Road, she said, and she actually looked at me when she said it, with that smile fully intact, is one of the most valuable underdeveloped corner lots in the area. Harold, we want you to know, and we're so excited to share this with everyone here tonight, that I've already spoken with a developer, and we'll be listing the property in the spring. It's going to be the foundation of our future. Together, the room was very quiet. I felt 50 pairs of eyes turn toward me. I felt Patricia's hand grip my forearm under the table. I felt Tommy go completely still to my left. I heard someone, I think it was one of Vanessa's cousins, start to clap. And I looked at Vanessa, then I looked at my son. Derek was looking at his champagne glass. He was not looking at me. I picked up my glass of water. I took a slow sip. I set it back down, and I smiled. Well, I said quietly, to no one in particular, isn't that something? And then I reached into my jacket pocket, took out my phone, excused myself quietly from the table, and walked out of the room. I stood in the hallway of the Willow Grove. The carpet was deep red. There was a landscape painting on the wall that I stared at while the phone rang. His name is Arthur Feynman. He has been my attorney for 22 years. He handled Gloria's will. He handled the refinancing of my mortgage. He is a quiet, thorough, methodical man. He answers his phone at 9:30 on a Saturday night because that is the kind of man he is. Harold, he said. Arthur, I said, I'm sorry to call on a Saturday. Don't apologize. What happened? I told him. Briefly, calmly, I told him everything she said, word for word. I have a good memory, always have. There was a pause on the line. Harold, Arthur said, does your son have power of attorney? No, I said. Does anyone? No. I am of sound mind and body, Arthur. Nobody has any authority over my affairs but me. Another pause. Then Arthur said, very calmly, Harold, first thing Monday morning, I want you in my office. We are going to put several things in place. In the meantime, you need to do nothing, say nothing, smile at people, go back to that party if you feel like it, but do not discuss the house, do not argue, and do not show your hand. I know, I said. I know you know, he said. I just want to say it out loud. I thanked him and hung up. I stood in that hallway for another minute. I thought about Gloria. I thought about the day we signed the papers on that house. I thought about the oak tree in the front yard, 31 years old. I thought about my son, who had not looked at me. Then I straightened my tie, walked back into that dining room, sat down, and ate my dessert. I did not call Derek that night, or the next day. He called me on Sunday evening. His voice was careful, measured. "Dad, I wanted to talk to you about last night." "Did you?" I said. "How are you feeling? Did you enjoy the party?" A pause. "Dad, Derek, it was a beautiful party. Vanessa looked lovely. The food was very good. I had a nice time. You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset? It was a wonderful party." Another long pause. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay, good. I'll talk to you soon, Dad. You take care of yourself, son. I love you." And I hung up. Patricia called me 20 minutes later. "Dad, what are you doing? Why aren't you talking to him about Patricia?" He just sat there and let her say that in front of everyone. "Patricia?" She stopped. "I need you to trust me," I said. "I am handling this. I just need you to say nothing to Derek or Vanessa for now. Can you do that for me?" A long pause. "How long?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "Dad, what are you planning?" "I'm planning to protect what your mother and I built. Now trust me. Can you do that?" She said yes. "My Patricia," she said yes. That Monday morning, I was in Arthur's office at 8:45. We worked for 2.5 hours. When I left, everything was in order. The house was protected in ways that would make any real estate scheme, any scheme at all, impossible. And then I waited. Now, this is the part of the story where I have to stop and take a breath. Because what happened next, I did not plan for it. I did not expect it, and when it came out, it changed everything. It was Arthur who found it. In the course of doing his due diligence, checking records, looking into transactions, Arthur called me 10 days after the party with a very specific question. "Harold, has Derek mentioned anything to you about a real estate company called Whitmore, Mercer Properties, LLC?" I said no. "Harold, this company was registered 4 months ago. It lists Vanessa Whitmore and Derek Mercer as co-founders. Gerald Whitmore, Vanessa's father, is listed as a silent investor." I didn't speak. "Harold, the business description for this LLC lists, among its assets, and I'm reading this directly, anticipated acquisition of residential property at your address, valued at approximately $340,000 for development into multi-unit rental housing. They had already built a company around my house. They had registered it 4 months ago, before the engagement party, before the proposal, almost. My son Derek, who had called me on a Sunday morning and told me he was in love and asked me to give her a chance, my son had signed documents that treated my home as a business asset. I sat in my armchair for a very long time after that phone call. I did not cry. I was past crying. I thought about the Thanksgiving where Vanessa first came to my house and looked at the walls like she was calculating something. I thought about what she had said on my back porch on the phone. "It's just a matter of timing." And I thought about my son, who had not looked at me at that party. He knew, he had known for months. Arthur advised me that the LLC, without my consent and without any ownership interest in my home, had no legal claim whatsoever. They had simply, and this was the word Arthur used with some disgust, assumed. They had assumed that I was an old man who could be publicly maneuvered, quietly pressured, and eventually worn down into compliance. They had made the most expensive assumption of their lives. 14 days after the engagement party, on a Tuesday morning, a car pulled up in front of my house. I was at the kitchen table drinking my coffee. I had been expecting this. Vanessa stepped out of the car. She was dressed professionally, blazer, heels, clipboard. Behind her was another young woman with a camera bag on her shoulder. A photographer. She was there to photograph my house. to begin the listing process. They walked up the front path, the same path Gloria planted tulips along every spring, the same path my grandchildren had walked up 100 times with muddy shoes and wide smiles. Vanessa knocked on my door. I stood up, smoothed my shirt, and walked to the door. But before I opened it, I stepped aside and looked out the side window. There were 2 police cars parked across the street. Arthur had made that arrangement the day before. I opened the door. Vanessa smiled her brilliant smile. "Harold, good morning. I hope we're not too early. This is my colleague Brianna. She's going to do some preliminary photography so we can get the listing ready." I looked at her. Then I looked past her at Brianna. Then I looked down at the clipboard Vanessa was holding, which had what appeared to be a listing agreement on it. I said, "Good morning, Vanessa. We're just going to start with the exterior today, and then, Vanessa," I said, keeping my voice very gentle, very quiet, "you should look across the street." She turned around. The 2 officers were already walking across the street toward us. I watched her face change. That brilliant smile, it didn't disappear all at once. It faded, like a light slowly dimming. I watched her look at the officers, then back at me, then at the officers again. "Mr. Mercer," the first officer said, nodding to me. "Any problems?" I believe these individuals are attempting to access and photograph private property without the owner's consent. I said, "I have not given any permission for any real estate listing, any photography, or any entry onto this property." Vanessa said, "Harold, there must be a misunderstanding. My attorney has filed a formal notice with the county recorder's office." I said calmly, confirming that this property is not listed, not for sale, and not subject to any outside representation. I have also filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Board regarding unauthorized representation claims made by Vanessa Whitmore at a private function 14 days ago. Vanessa's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Brianna, the photographer, had already quietly stepped back toward the car. "Ma'am," the officer said to Vanessa, "I'm going to need to ask you to step off this gentleman's property." I watched her go. She walked back down that tulip path. She got in her car. She drove away. I stood on my porch and watched until the car was out of sight. Then I went back inside and finished my coffee. Derek called me that afternoon. He was not careful or measured this time. "Dad, what did you do?" "Vanessa is beside herself." "You called the police on her?" "She was just—" "Derek," I said, "stop talking and listen to me." Something in my voice must have reached him because he stopped. "I know about Whitmore, Mercer Properties, LLC, I said. "I know it was registered 4 months ago. I know it lists my home as an anticipated acquisition. I know your future father-in-law is a silent investor, and I know you signed those documents." Silence, complete silence, on the line. "Derek, I want to ask you one question, and I want you to really think before you answer, because the answer matters to me more than almost anything else in this world. Dad, did you love her before you knew what she wanted to do with my house? Or did the 2 come together?" Another silence. Longer this time. His voice, when it came, was different, quieter, younger somehow. "Dad, it wasn't like that. I mean at first. I mean the house just came up in conversation, and Gerald said it would be a great investment, and Vanessa said we could." "Derek, yeah." "That's not an answer." The longest silence of all. Then, "I don't know, Dad. I don't know any more." I closed my eyes. "I want you to come over," I said. "Not today. Take a few days. Think hard about what you want your life to look like, and then come over. Come alone. I'll make dinner." "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry." "I know, son. I'll see you soon." I didn't know this had happened until Patricia told me later, but the day after the confrontation, Vanessa called Patricia. According to Patricia, the conversation went something like this. Vanessa said that I had humiliated her, that I had overreacted, that she was simply trying to help the family, and that if I would just listen to the financial logic, I would see that listing the house was the smart move. Patricia, who had been keeping silent for 2 weeks at my request, let out everything. She said, "Vanessa, that house is where my mother died. That is where my children take their first steps when they come to visit their grandfather. That is not a financial asset. That is our family. And you stood up in front of 50 people and announced you were selling it without asking my father, without his permission, without even a conversation. You treated my father like he was already gone." Vanessa apparently said that Patricia was being overly emotional. Patricia said, "Get out of my brother's life. She called me to tell me about it, and she was crying." Patricia, who almost never cries, "I'm sorry, Dad. I should have stayed out of it." "No, baby," I said. "You said exactly what needed to be said. Your mother would have said the same thing." She laughed a little through her tears. "Mom would have said it with more fire. Much more fire." I agreed. He came on a Thursday evening, 12 days after the confrontation on the phone. "I made spaghetti and meatballs, the same dinner I made every Friday night when the kids were growing up. Gloria's recipe. He knew what it meant when I made that dinner." He walked in and stopped in the entryway. He looked around at the walls, the family photographs, the old coat rack by the door that has been there since 1991. He looked like he was seeing it for the first time. "Smells good," he said. "Sit down," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." We ate mostly in silence. I told him about Tommy's new project at work. I told him about Marcus, Patricia's son, who had made the honor roll. I talked about small things, normal things, family things. After dinner, I poured 2 glasses of lemonade, and we sat on the back porch. The oak tree stood in the front yard, visible from where we sat, 31 years old, taller than the roof. Derek said, "I ended the engagement, Dad." I looked at him. His jaw was tight. His eyes were red at the edges. "I did a lot of thinking," he said, "and I kept coming back to one moment at the party when she was making that announcement, and I couldn't look at you." He stopped. "I couldn't look at you, Dad, and I knew in that moment, I knew something was wrong, not just with what she was doing, with me, with who I'd been letting myself become." I said nothing. "She had a whole vision," he said, "for everything, the house, the LLC, the development plan. She talked about it like it was already decided, like you were just, I don't know, a detail to work out. And what did you think?" I asked quietly. He was quiet for a long time. I told myself that you'd be okay with it eventually, that you'd see the logic, that you were older and maybe didn't fully understand what the property was worth, and..." He stopped. He put his face in his hands. "I was going to help them take your house, Dad, because I told myself a story about it that made it okay." I let the silence hold for a while. Then I said, "Derek, look at me." He looked up. "I forgive you. I want you to hear that before anything else. You are my son. You are going to make mistakes in this life, real ones, costly ones, embarrassing ones. So did I. So will everyone. Question is not whether you make them. The question is whether you're willing to sit on your father's porch afterward and tell the truth about them." He nodded. His eyes were wet. "Your mother," I said, "used to say that the people who love you most are the ones who are still there after you've shown them the worst of yourself. She was right." "I'm sorry, Dad," he said. "I'm so sorry." "I know," I said. "Now drink your lemonade." He laughed, a broken, exhausted, relieved laugh. We sat on that porch until nearly midnight. Let me tell you what happened in the weeks and months after. Gerald Whitmore, Vanessa's father and the silent investor in Whitmore, Mercer Properties LLC, received a formal letter from Arthur Feynman detailing the unauthorized business registration that used a description of my property as an anticipated asset, property to which none of them had any legal claim or any permission to reference in any commercial document. Gerald, to his credit, or perhaps to his legal team's credit, responded quickly. The LLC was dissolved within 30 days. A formal letter of acknowledgement was issued, No admission of wrongdoing, of course. These things never include admissions of wrongdoing. But it was dissolved. It was done. The State Real Estate Board conducted a review of Vanessa's license regarding the unauthorized representation claims. She received a formal reprimand and a mandatory compliance course. She did not lose her license, but the reprimand is on her public record. In real estate, reputation is everything. She will carry that reprimand for a long time. Derek spent several months doing a lot of quiet reflection. He went to therapy, his idea, not mine, and I could not have been more proud of him for it. He started calling me every Sunday morning, the way Tommy always had. He came for dinner twice a month. He helped me re-roof the back section of the porch in August. He has not started dating again yet. I think he is in no hurry, and I think that is wise. Patricia told me that at a family gathering a few months later, a cousin who had been at the engagement party, one of the ones who had started clapping when Vanessa made her announcement, came and found me in the kitchen and said, awkwardly, that she was sorry for not speaking up that night. I told her not to worry about it. What you did was the classiest thing I've ever seen, she said. Most people would have exploded. I'm too old to explode, I told her. It takes too much energy. She laughed. And as for my house on Clover Hill Road, it is still mine. Every single square foot of it. The oak tree is still growing in the front yard, thick and strong and unbothered by any of this. The tulips will come up again in the spring. The back porch, freshly repaired, is ready for next summer. I am making no plans to go anywhere. Here is the powerful truth that I kept to myself for a long time. The thing that most people don't know, the thing that, when I finally told Derek, made him go very quiet. Gloria knew. Before she died, Gloria and I sat down with Arthur, and we made very specific plans for this house. Not just standard estate planning, very specific plans. Plans that accounted for the possibility, the human, unfortunate, realistic possibility, that someone might someday try to use love, family loyalty, or financial pressure to take what we had built. She made me promise. Harold, she said, this was about 3 months before the end, in the hospital, when she was still sharp as a tack, that house is the family's anchor. It is where they will come back to. It is where grandchildren will know they have roots. I need you to protect it, not for yourself, for all of them. I promised her. So when Vanessa stood up at that engagement party and announced with a champagne smile that she was listing our home, she wasn't just going up against a quiet old man in a Navy suit. She was going up against 22 years of relationship with a very thorough attorney. She was going up against a deed with specific protective clauses. She was going up against a promise I made to my dying wife. She was never going to win. And when I finally told Derek all of this, when I sat him down and showed him the documents, explained what Gloria had put in place, explained that his mother had thought of this long before anyone else had, he was quiet for a very long time. Then he said, Mom always knew, didn't she? She always saw everything. She did. I said, she set this up to protect you. She set it up to protect all of us. I said, including you, especially you. He cried then. Properly, the kind of crying that has been waiting a long time to come out. I held my son, my 38-year-old son, the way I held him when he was 8 years old and had a nightmare. And I let him cry, because sometimes that's what a father's arms are for. I have had a lot of time to think about this story. About what it means. About what I want to carry forward from it. Here is what I've come to. There is a kind of person in this world who looks at everything, including the people who love them, as a resource. A thing to be managed, leveraged, and eventually converted into something more profitable. They are not always evil people. Sometimes they are just broken people, raised to believe that value only exists in things you can measure. Vanessa saw my house and she saw money. She saw my age and she saw a clock ticking. She saw my son's love for her and she saw an opportunity. What she could not see what that kind of thinking never allows you to see, is what a house like mine actually is. It's not 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms and a corner lot with good development potential. It's where Gloria and I argued about whether to paint the living room blue or green, and painted it blue, and then repainted it green 2 years later when she was right. It's where Derek learned to ride a bike on the driveway and came in crying with a skinned knee and sat at the kitchen table while I put antiseptic on it and told him brave men cry too. It's where Patricia Slow danced with her father in the kitchen the morning of her wedding because she was too nervous to eat breakfast. It's where Tommy sat on the back porch steps every evening for 3 months after his first heartbreak, not saying much, and I sat next to him not saying much either, because sometimes presence is the only thing that helps. It's where Gloria came home from her last round of chemotherapy and sat in her chair on the front porch and said, "The tulips are coming up, Harold. Isn't that something?" You cannot put a price on any of that, and anyone who tries to has misunderstood the most fundamental thing about what it means to be a family. To Derek, I want to say this. I do not blame you for being human. I do not blame you for wanting love, for being dazzled, for letting someone else's ambition temporarily cloud your own values. That is a very human thing. What matters, what will always matter, is that you came back. You sat on the porch. You told the truth. That's everything. To anyone watching who has an older parent, a father, a mother, a grandparent, who is quiet and humble and asks for nothing, please look closer. The quiet ones have seen more than you know. They have been through storms you have never faced. They have built things, with their hands and their hearts, that you are still benefiting from. Do not confuse their silence with weakness. Do not confuse their patience with blindness. And do not ever mistake their love for an opportunity, because some of them, like me, have a very good attorney on speed dial. My name is Harold Eugene Mercer. I am 63 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on Clover Hill Road with white siding and dark green shutters. There is an oak tree in my front yard, 31 years old, taller than the roof. I planted that tree with my wife, Gloria, the year our youngest was born. And I am going nowhere. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you love or something you might have taken for granted, please take a moment right now to subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you have a story of your own about patience, about dignity, about protecting what matters, drop it in the comments below. This community was built for stories exactly like yours. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one.